Last week, Wayne Gretzky and Kevin Lowe announced that it'll be the reunion of the 1984 Stanley Cup winning Edmonton Oilers team. It'll be the first time that all the players will be reunited since 1984. Now that's probably the only time I'll mention the Edmonton Oilers in a good light. In fact, they probably should have won the Stanley Cup in 1983 when they made the Stanley Cup Finals against the New York Islanders. Now the Islanders are going for the 4th Stanley Cup win. Now the Edmonton Oilers, as I mentioned, should have won the Stanley Cup in '83 because they were the highest scoring team in NHL history. They were 10 points better than the Islanders in the regular season standings. And the Islanders were getting a little long in the tooth. They were getting old. And so here are these upstarts who are going to show them how it's done. Well, you know what happened to the Edmonton Oilers? Why they didn't win the Stanley Cup in 1983? They were swept. 4 games, done. And they only scored 6 goals. Now what happened? Well, for one thing, the Islanders did not like the Oilers. They said, these guys are too cocky, we're going to show them how to play. And they did. And also another reason why they won is Denny Potvin, the great defenseman for the Islanders. His father was dying. And so Denny Potvin said, hey Dad, if you survive, I'll win the Stanley Cup for you. And he did. But more profoundly of why the Islanders won the Stanley Cup in 1983 was, as Kevin Lowe reveals in his autobiography, him and Wayne Gretzky had passed by the Islanders' dressing room. And one would expect, hey, 4th Stanley Cup, you know how to celebrate. But what they saw was not celebration, but agony. That the guys were nursing their bruises and breaks, and they were in agony, struggling with the injuries that they suffered because they laid everything out on the ice. And that's why they won, because they poured themselves out totally in order to win the Stanley Cup. So you can't win on talent alone, that's what the Oilers realized. But you have to play the game, and you have to give it everything you've got. So the Islanders showed you have to enter into the crucible. You have to pour yourself out in order to become a championship team. And therefore, the Oilers learned that lesson and won 5 Stanley Cups in 7 years. So they realized the crucible, the action, pouring oneself out, led to the Oilers winning championships. So too for us. The cross transforms us to be champions. Last week's gospel, we heard about Jesus wanting to form his championship team, the church. So he takes them out of a very religiously oriented place, Caesarea Philippi, and he asks his disciples, who do you say that I am? They think you're a good prophet, you're a good prophet, Elijah, Jeremiah, or John the Baptist. But then he goes to the disciples gathered around him, who do you say that I am? And it's Peter, who's always referred to as the first among the band of apostles. You are the Son of the living God. You are the Messiah. And then Jesus says, okay, because of Peter's faith, 2 things happen to him. One, Jesus says that you are no longer Peter, you're no longer Simon, but you are Peter. Peter means rock in Greek. And on your faith, I will build my church. That's a championship team, the church. And the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. So his name changes, and he's given a responsibility. Great. But then he says at the end of last week's gospel, if you recount, is that he says that he told his disciples, do not reveal anything of this until I have risen from the dead. Why? Well, the answer is revealed in today's gospel, that Jesus gives the first of his 3 predictions of his suffering and death. Now, as I mentioned, Peter is the first of the apostles, and I think because Jesus realized, hey, he's a pretty talented guy, this Peter. He's full of vim and vigor, and he's strong. And also that Peter, James, and John are taken to Jesus' confidence quite often. That Peter he's the first one called by Jesus among all the disciples, and he's seen the healings. He said, this guy is the real deal. So when Jesus announced that he's going to suffer and die by the hands of the Jewish leaders, those who he's essentially come to save, well, wouldn't we be like Peter and say, no, it's not going to happen to you, you're my friend. But Jesus says to him, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do. And Jesus says, well, why would... He reveals what the stumbling block entails. It's for those who do not take the cross to follow Jesus. And those who save their lives will lose it, and those who lose their lives for my sake will find it. So the cross transforms us to be members of a championship team. And for those who have an appreciation of what the cross signifies historically, especially among the Roman Empire, will realize the cross is a horrific instrument of death. That the whole purpose of the cross was to say, if you mess around with us as a member, if you're challenged the Roman Empire, you are going to suffer. So once on the cross, I mean, Jesus was mercifully dead in 3 hours, but some people would be on the cross for days, being picked at by birds, being sunburned, being mocked by people. So why would Jesus choose to say to his disciples that you must carry your cross and follow me? Why is the cross the instrument of not only grace and redemption, but also a good thing? The fact that Jesus himself had to be nailed to the cross. And I think we find a tremendous amount of symbolism in what Jesus has done. I think there are two things about the cross that are significant. I think one is that Jesus himself took up his cross. In John's Gospel, he says that when I am lifted up, I will draw all people to myself. And that's why we begin the Mass. We begin with the procession of the cross, realizing, hey, it is Jesus who gave himself totally for us. And then he'll also say in John's Gospel that it's a seed that dies to itself that bears great fruit. And John the Baptist, also in John's Gospel, will say that, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Well, that's an allusion to the book of Exodus, that just before the Israelites are liberated from slavery into Egypt, that they killed the lamb, put the lamb over the lamb's blood over the doorposts of the houses, and the angel of death passes over. So those who have the blood are saved. Those who do not are to die. And so Jesus is a Lamb of God. So in order for him to pour out his blood for our true liberation, he has to go on the cross. So if Jesus takes up the cross, well, so do we. So that's the one thing about why we take up the cross. Because if we're to follow Jesus, we have to also pour ourselves out. Just as the Edmonton Oilers learned from the New York Islanders. The thing about the cross is its shape. And again, this is the genius of God. Is its instrument of torture becomes an instrument of grace and redemption. We notice that the beam of the cross goes vertical, uniting us to God. And Jesus is God. And also the horizontal beam connects us to one another. And so it's Jesus that unifies God and human beings together. And I think it's a wonderful symbol also of the great law of love. To love God and to love our neighbor. To love God and love our neighbor. And so the cross is this great symbol of unity. You know? So Jesus shows us the way to do it and reminds us, hey, we have to love him and we have to love our neighbor. So the cross that transforms us to be members of the championship team. Now many of us have major crosses to bear. And some people don't believe in God because they say, how can a good God allow suffering to take place in the world? Well, that's really the mystery of suffering, but also the mystery of death. And the Lord allows suffering to take place to see people physically or mentally or emotionally taking up the cross, because hopefully it moves people to help others. Even Jesus could not take up his cross alone. He had Simon of Cyrene help him take the cross. There's a tradition of Veronica wiped the face of Jesus while he was carrying his cross. And even in Luke's Gospel, Mary, his mother, comes to console him as he carries his cross. So Jesus does not carry the cross alone. He needs others to help him. And so when we see people taking up their cross physically, emotionally, psychologically, it's a matter, hey, we've got to help them out. This call to love our neighbor. And also, hey, that our lives are to be united to Jesus. And so some people say, I don't want to take the cross, but really we have to accept our cross because Jesus himself did it. And there's always some great plan in the midst of suffering that the Lord allows suffering for a greater good to come out of it. And it is a mystery. But it's always reminding ourselves that the cross transforms to be members of the championship team. But we, of course, can't do it alone. And so thankfully we have the witness of all of us here, that as we talk after Mass or before Mass and to share the sufferings we have, we all help each other out. We witness to that great love. And also that we have the divine love, that horizontal barrier, or that horizontal bar of our unity to God. And he gives us his word to inspire us, and the food of the Eucharist to nourish us on this journey. Not only to take up our cross and follow him, but help others take up their cross. And so really only in the pouring out, as exemplified so wonderfully by Jesus, that we truly become Christians, followers and members of the championship team. So in October, the 30th anniversary of the 1984 Oilers championship team will all get together for the first time. And I think they'll all remember, hey, what it takes to be a member of the championship team. You can't go by talent alone or faith alone, but it's a matter of really pouring oneself out for the good of the whole team. And they saw that in New York Islanders. So this week, as we are nourished by God's presence and the witness here, let us take up our cross and follow Jesus, and also help others to bear witness to the love that Jesus has for us through the power of the cross. So the cross transforms us to be a championship team.